Shadowbox TV here. Yesterday I made a video about Cuban fighters within the sport of boxing and the unique position that they have within the sport, in the fact that despite being the most talented fighters generally across the board within boxing, and also having the most decorated amateur pedigree out of any other nation within boxing, which includes Mexicans, which includes other nations, including African Americans. Obviously, Cubans have the most Olympic gold medals when it comes to amateur boxing, so they have the most decorated amateur pedigree when it comes to boxing in general. And in professional boxing, their fighters, their top fighters, do tend to be the most talented fighters pound for pound in the sport. Despite having this obvious talent, they can't seem to monetize and take advantage of their unique position and actually have any political power when it comes to within boxing, in terms of controlling, having a strategic position within boxing where they can capitalize on their talent. Now, yesterday I made that video, but there's one fighter I believe that is breaking a mold when it comes to this typical stereotype when it comes to Cuban fighters. That fighter is the fighter that you see on screen right now. It's Luis Ortiz. I'm just looking at his box rec right now. He's 27-0 with 23 knockouts. He's 38 years old. He's a southpaw who's obviously from Cuba, and he operates in the heavyweight division. So it must be said, there's a multiple reasons why I believe he is an anomaly within the sport of boxing. One reason why I believe he's an anomaly within the sport of boxing, it must be said, he's a relatively short heavyweight. So obviously, compared to other heavyweights out there like Deontay Wilder and obviously Anthony Joshua, and obviously Vladimir Klitschko has just retired, but obviously you got other fighters like Tyson Fury. He's a relatively short heavyweight. He's not that big when it comes to the heavyweight, when it comes to his stature within the heavyweight division. Another reason why I believe he's an anomaly within the sport, when you look at fighters like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, obviously Tyson Fury, and a multitude of other fighters out there that may not be champions, but they are contenders coming up. Obviously Jarrell Miller, Dylan White, all these other fighters. They're relatively young fighters when it comes to the sport of boxing, so they're still in their 20s, while this Luis Ortiz is literally 38, and there's records and there's people saying that he may be older than 38, so he may be in his early 40s, mid 40s. So I believe he's an anomaly when it comes to the Cuban in the heavyweight division, because he's considered to be within this class of heavyweight fighters, in terms of this new era of heavyweight fighters that includes obviously Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker. You've got these other fighters like obviously who ain't considered the top of the heap. For example, Dylan White, Jarrell Miller, these other fighters that are coming through that may not hold titles. For example, Hughie Fury, who's going to fight for a title obviously soon in Manchester. So of course he's part of that. He's part of that class of heavyweights, but most of them heavyweights are young heavyweights. He's a relatively old fighter when it comes to that. When compared to that class, yet he's considered one of the best heavyweights in the division, and he's considered a dark horse within the division. There's not that many fighters that are clamoring to fight him. Another reason why he's an anomaly within the sport of boxing, if you look at Cuban fighters in general, most of them are slick fighters that are outside boxers. So if you look at fighters like Rigondeaux, Erislandy Lara, to some extent Gamboa, they're fighters that use extremely slick fighters who fight on the outside, who are extremely athletic. But with Luis Ortiz, he's a bit of an anomaly when it comes to Cuban boxing, because he's a bit of an inside fighter. He's a fighter that likes to pressure. He has great fundamentals, but he's a fighter that has who fights with a different style to the traditional Cuban fighter that likes to fight on the outside and likes to use slick reflexes. He's a fighter that tries to outpower his opponents, and that could be actually seen from his actual box record. He's got 23 KOs, which is quite a large KO percentage. It must be said as well, his last fight was obviously against Dave Allen in the UK. and obviously the fight between that Malik Scott and obviously Bryant Jennings, where he did actually score a TKO knockout, which is quite impressive. But it must be said, another reason why he's actually an anomaly when it comes to the traditional Cuban fighter. He did actually sign with two big time promoters, and he did have strong political alliances when it came to actually signing with them two promoters in Eddie Hearn and obviously Al Heyman. So the previous Cuban fighters that I have mentioned before, they never managed to get that political connection to actually connect with a promoter that had their best interest at heart. An example of that can be seen with Rigondeaux. Obviously, Rigondeaux connected with Bob Arum, but after he beat Nonito Donaire in that fight, Bob Arum literally just blackballed his career, and his career hasn't been the same ever since. And obviously, he's going to get this fight against Lomachenko, but until it's officially signed and dated, I'm gonna be skeptical about that fight actually happening, just because of his turbulent relationship with Bob Arum. But obviously, Luis Ortiz has been in a fortunate position. He managed to get with Al Heyman, and now he's in a position where he's gonna have to actually fight either Deontay Wilder or Anthony Joshua for one of their straps. So he's in a position now where he could get a fight between either of them and actually make great money within the sport of boxing, and potentially life-changing money. So it must be said, obviously Deontay Wilder's signed with Al Heyman, so that fight between Luis Ortiz and Deontay Wilder could happen because they're underneath the same advisor, which is Al Heyman. But even I seen a article where Anthony Joshua said that he's more than willing to actually fight. He's more than willing to fight Luis Ortiz, but he wants to get past Kubrat Pulev and actually defend his mandatory title so that he can keep his belt. So here you got a fighter in Luis Ortiz who's a bit of an anomaly when it comes to the traditional Cuban fighter in the sport of boxing, because of the fact that he's not a young upstart talent that just came out of nowhere. He's an old heavyweight. He doesn't fight with the traditional Cuban style. He's a pressure fighter who has great fundamentals, but he's not an outboxer like Rigondeaux. Or Erislandy Lara. He's a bit of a different style of Cuban heavyweight, and also he's a short heavyweight. And on top of that, he's also got great political alliances within the sport of boxing. So you can see he's one of the few Cuban fighters that may actually fulfill his potential in terms of monetizing his talent. There's not that many Cuban fighters out there like that who have actually fully monetized their talent. You've got fighters like Rigondeaux who hasn't really made real money when it comes to the sport of boxing in terms of monetizing his talent, in terms of making the most amount of money that he could potentially make with the talent that he has. So I think he's a very interesting fighter to follow. Obviously he's part of this new era of heavyweight fighters, which includes Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Vladimir Klitschko. Obviously Vladimir Klitschko is retired. Sorry, I didn't mean Vladimir Klitschko. I meant Deontay Wilder, Joseph Parker, obviously Jarrell Miller, Dylan White. He's part of that class, but they're all young guys. This is someone who's pretty old, but he's still considered to be part of that class of heavyweights. So I think he's a bit of a different heavyweight when it comes to what you traditionally think of a star when it comes to the heavyweight division. But he's a fighter that nobody wants to actually fight. But with his political alliance with Al Heyman, I think he's gonna get to a position where the top fighters are gonna struggle to avoid him eventually, because of the fact that he's got such a strong connection with a very strong advisor in Al Heyman. So I'm looking forward to seeing how his career progresses. You could potentially say that he actually does hold the future of the heavyweight division in his hands in some sense, because if he fights and beats Wilder, then he gets a portion of the WBC title, and if he obviously beats Anthony Joshua, if they do fight, he can get a portion of that title. And either way, even if he loses to both of them, he's still going to make probably better money than most of the other heavyweights, most of the other Cuban fighters have made so far. So I feel like he's a new breed when it comes to these other actual Cuban fighters who don't tend to make the best business decisions when it comes to the sport of boxing. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on Luis Ortiz. I feel like he's he's a very interesting heavyweight, and I'm definitely going to be following his career and seeing where it progresses from here. But yeah, tell me what you think below. Obviously subscribe to this new channel. I've got more content coming your way, and down below on the link below, I've got links for my Facebook group on my Facebook page. Join that for more boxing debate, and I'll see you lot later. Peace out.